Continuing here on the Exam Room podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee with the weight loss champion Chuck Carroll. And it is time to share another incredible success story. Someone who has radically transformed their life. And no doubt my next guest certainly fits that bill. Melissa Ann Matthews is her name. She's been featured in Forks Over Knives. And it's easy to see why when you talk to her, because she has lost an extraordinary 70 pounds by eating a plant-based diet and eliminating all those unhealthy habits from her life. Melissa, thank you so very much for joining us, and congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to start with, what was it that really got you to being this unhealthy person that you wanted to eventually change? A lot of times it can be emotional. A lot of times it can be a food addiction. It could be any number of things. But what was your journey to unhealth, as it were?
Yeah. I think it was sort of a spiral effect. Definitely starting with just, I went through a very lengthy custody battle that went on for about 10 years. And, it was just easier to medicate with whether, bad food choices, alcohol, all of those things. And one bad choice leads to another bad choice, leads to another. And I ended up just not being healthy enough, mentally to make good physical choices. So, I wasn't working out. I wasn't, practicing self-care. I have since recognized that whole being wellness per se is all encompassing. So there's absolutely no way to become physically healthy if you do not have a strong mental base for that. So I took that road instead of starting with the physical. I started with the mental, and then that sort of spiraled in a good way into, being able to make healthier life choices.
And 10 years is such a long time to spend in emotional turmoil. I'm curious, prior to that legal battle ensuing, were you leading a healthier lifestyle? Were you already a heavy drinker? I know that you were smoking as well at the time.
What's that? I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry. I said 10 years is such a long time to spend in emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about what your life was like before that decade began. Were you a heavy smoker or a heavy drinker already at that point?
Not really. I would say that I spent, my 20s doing a lot of what normal 20-year-olds do. I was social, but it was not the pinpoint of my life. I was pretty athletic. I spent time doing healthy things. I was not overweight. So it was really just sort of during that time of my life where things got kind of out of control that, one bad choice led to another, and I just became sort of sedentary, I guess. Do when you're that overweight. There's not a lot
And
of motivation to
let's
do
talk
anything
about
healthy, really.
Yeah, let's talk about how your diet evolved. That's a really profound statement that you just made. I mean, in your piece on Forks Over Knives, here I'll pull that up on the screen for those of you who are watching this right now on YouTube or on Facebook. You wrote, and I thought that this was really telling, that you had little desire to do
Mhm.
anything healthy. I mean, anything healthy whatsoever. And I think that's such a profound statement, because it really goes to show where you were in terms of depression, and you were seeking comfort in these things that you knew were unhealthy for you. So we've talked about the alcohol, we've talked about the cigarettes. Now let's go ahead and talk about the comfort that you found from eating these high fat, high calorie foods and going down the unhealthy nutrition route. What was it that you were gravitating to on that end?
Well, I think it was just whatever was easiest. I did not want to spend the time to learn how to cook healthy foods. I didn't want to spend the time to eat, even make healthy choices like eating a banana instead of opening a bag of chips. It just was easier to um, run through. I probably stopped and got a breakfast sandwich every morning. When I think about that now, it's like, geez, I could have, made one myself that was healthier and took just as much time. Or grab a piece of fruit, or it was definitely convenience, and certainly not understanding how easy it is to eat healthy if you just have some minimal information on it, about what to have on hand.
Yeah, and I mean, convenience foods are so easy, whether it be in the 7-Eleven with that bag of chips
Yeah.
or the drive-through that's on every single corner, sometimes 2 and 3 of them. It's unbelievable how readily available those types of foods are, and it does put a lot of us in the jackpot. But as far as finding comfort in things, I know that for me, when I was feeling bad, I would always go to Taco Bell. I mean, I went to Taco Bell every single day regardless, but I always somehow felt better after I ate it, at least mentally. I'm curious, was that the case for you? Like when you would go through the drive-through or eat that bag of chips, did you get a sense of calm that came with that?
Yeah, and it's definitely habitual. You just do that because that's all you know. And yes, I was completely addicted to feeling security
Mm,
with eating. Whether it was alone at home where nobody could see, or, like you said, like going through a drive through where I didn't have to be in public, making bad choices and feeling like I was being judged.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, there was definitely a security behind it.
Why were you worried about being judged for your eating habits at that point?
Just because I was so physically, like visibly unhealthy,
Yeah,
probably same way most people feel
yeah.
when they are fully aware that they're making unhealthy choices, you
It
know?
yeah, and man, it's so interesting that we do fat shaming has become such a hot topic, and there
Mhm.
is no fat shaming that could possibly be worse than what the person is often doing to themselves psychologically. Like you, I would always go to the drive-through and then come home and basically bury myself in my room and eat everything there out of eyesight from everybody, because I didn't want them to know just how bad things had gotten. It- I mean, that's such a difficult, difficult thing. Why do you think that it is that we know that it's unhealthy? We know that we're feeling bad about what it is that we're doing, yet for some reason we still can't stop ourselves. We can't help ourselves at points.
Yeah. Um, for me, I had so little control over everything else that was going on in my life that it did feel like something that I had control over. And I was already feeling judged as a mother, as, you know, on a lot of levels. So for me, it just felt not like a defiance thing, but just something that I could choose to do. And, um, so I did. And eventually it got to the point where I was choosing to do healthier things. But at that time in my life, um, it was what I wanted to do. It was the only thing that made me feel like I was in control.
Yeah, I believe me. There are I hear that on both ends of the spectrum when there's chaos raging outside. A lot of times people do search for that control and they can control what it is that they eat. And they either go one of two ways. They either go to the drive-through
Mhm.
and go down this unhealthy road, or they really internalize everything and they take a real hard examination of what it is that they're doing, and they
Mhm.
decide to implement healthier changes, which they have equal amounts of control over. And
Mhm.
then they really thrive and they succeed in there. And you got to that point eventually, and you are to be commended for that because not everybody reaches that point. But before we get to that, I want to talk about when it was during this time that you first realized that you were gaining weight, that you started to feel ill, you started to feel sick physically?
Yeah. So I didn't really know that I was fat, I guess. Which is, I look back now and I think, wow, how could I have not known? But I think a lot of it too, I hid behind baggy clothes. I made a lot of excuses for how I was feeling that had nothing to do with, um, how somebody would inevitably feel being 70 pounds overweight. Um, I blamed it a lot on anxiety, the depression when I knew probably long before I admitted it that it was, I wasn't sleeping at night because I was having trouble breathing. I wasn't waking up my body every day with exercise or putting good things into it to make me feel motivated to work out, or do anything at that point, walk even, get the blood flowing. So I think the breaking point for me was just realizing that I had control to make this better, to make this easier. That if I wanted to lose weight, it would be a lot easier if I changed my relationship with food, my relationship with some of the, drinking, the addictions I had, drinking and smoking. So that's when I just sort of stopped. And I don't want to say cold turkey because that's kind of a funny,
Yeah,
reference.
it was weird for
Plant-based,
me
but
too. Yeah, I got you.
but it kind of was. I mean, I kind of just woke up one day and said, I'm done with this. And, it was a slow process, but it did not take long for me to realize that what I was putting into my body had a direct effect on how motivated I would feel to keep going. And, the changes happened quick. So,
I would hope that you were getting some sort of external emotional support during this. I'm curious if any of your friends or your family had made any comments to you over concerns about your health.
yes, I think that everybody knew that when it was at its worst or when I was at my lowest, um, that probably the best mechanism to try to motivate me to be healthier was to just know that they were there. There was not a lot of pressure to, you know, they knew that I was probably handling as much as I could. Um, when I know that there was just an outpouring of, you know, everybody was so thrilled when I realized for myself that I needed to make the changes, and then I was very supported throughout.
Yeah.
Just by uh, my sister in particular was, sending me books all the time. The cheese trap was one of them. That one is the one that completely changed my view of what I was eating. And just sticking with me. And it took over a year to lose all the weight, but it was very clear to everybody in my life that this was a lifestyle change. And I'm really proud to say that I've inspired some other people to do it too. To cut out just animal protein in general, and it's made a huge difference with them as well. So I'm a living breathing example
Oh
that
yeah. Yeah. You are a shining example of what can be done when a person puts their mind to it and wants to make these changes and has that epiphany, that aha. You wake up that one morning and you're like, can't be doing what I've been doing anymore. Nope, it's time to go all in a different direction.
Yeah.
But before the reason why I want to keep talking about Melissa version 1.0, the reason why I want to stay here is because it there are so many people who feel like they could never make these changes themselves, right? But the more layers of the onion a person shares, they peel back themselves and share of their own story, the more somebody who's listening to this can identify with it. And so I want to go back to those excuses that you made when you were still overweight. Again, you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but I've highlighted it on the screen here. You said, quote, I made excuses for why I was sick and tired all the time. What were some of the things that you would say to yourself and to others as far as why you continued down that unhealthy path?
Um, well, I mean, specifically one that jumps out at me is just I'm dealing with things that other people don't have to deal with right now. Um, and what I mean by that is, I was spending consecutive days in court. Like, I think the longest stretch I went was 18 days where I was in a courtroom. It's grueling, it's exhausting mentally to have to go through that. And then, that was spread out over a period of years, having to do that at different times, different months. And in my mind, I thought, well, most people don't have to deal with this. So that was a huge excuse. When really, if I could have changed my perspective on it at the time, that would have been more of a motivator to, stay healthy, to be healthy, which is ultimately what happened. But at that time, that was one of the big excuses, that I just felt like I was dealing with stuff that most people didn't have to. So, I deserve to eat crap or,
Yeah.
medicate with wine at night.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that we do make more excuses for ourselves to try to convince ourselves that it's okay to justify going to that drive-through again, and we can come up with a million and one of them. It could be like one particular thing that happened in court that day. It was like, oh, that's the reason why I'm going to drink that wine tonight, or oh, that's the reason why I'm going to kill this pint of Haagen Dazs. It's so interesting that we do that to ourselves. I found for myself far more than I did with anybody else as far as my weight, my appearance, my physical um, abilities at that point, just being so limited.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the morning that let's time to get positive for goodness sakes. We spent enough time in the dark here. Let's talk about the morning that you woke up and you said, "Nope, time to make some changes. Can't be doing what I've been doing anymore." Did you have a sense that you were building to this, or was it just you woke up one morning, you opened your eyes, and that was that?
Um, well, I was about halfway through the cheese trap. Um, I was making healthier choices, is, the easy healthy choices where I was, you know, substituting what I would normally eat with like a soy based, fake meat product, or, things like that. So I was starting to do small things like that. Um, but the day that I really decided that I was gonna, you know, just stop living unwell, it was when I made the effort to, no matter how bad or unmotivated I felt, I was still gonna go to the gym. And maybe if I couldn't run the whole time, I was still gonna at least go as far as, whatever my goal was that day. And maybe walk. And then I realized that I was leaving the gym and I was taking the long way home so that I could smoke a cigarette on the way home. It occurred to me that it would probably be easier to reach some of these, fitness goals if I cut that out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I did, I mean, it's a prime example of how sometimes you just have to find a different way to get to where you want to be. And, for me, changing my eating habits, started making me feel like I had more energy to do things, and then, so on and so on. So,
Yeah. And
but
true.
yeah, it was a, it
It
was
was.
definitely an aha moment.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny you bring up the cigarettes. I don't know if I've ever shared this story on the show before. And one of the times that I was attempting to lose weight, it just trapped in this yo-yo dieting cycle. I got this gym membership, and I had my routine down. I would go and I would do cardio first, and then
Mhm.
as a reward, I would take a break, go outside, smoke a cigarette, then come back and lift weights. And that's just the way that it was. And that was perfectly normal for me. And I couldn't understand why other people who were walking into the gym were staring at me like I had two heads. So I completely understand where you were. Um,
Yeah.
was it harder for you to give up smoking or to give up unhealthy eating habits?
For sure smoking. And I think because there's a huge difference between, so with healthy eating, I mean, you feel good,
Yeah.
right? And with smoking, you feel good. But so I feel like I worked very hard at both. I worked really hard to feel good one way or another, but unfortunately, some of the things that were making me feel good were, the wine and the cigarette at the end of the day, or on my way home from the gym, which is just crazy. But
Yeah.
I we have to figure out for ourselves what things to keep and what things to get rid of. And for me, it was sort of, it doesn't seem like it because it took so long, but it was when I started to get really serious about running, and making a goal to complete a half marathon, that kind of thing, or a race at all. I knew that I would have to stop the cigarettes. And of course, I went down to one a day, or I'd only have one every other day, or it was, and then I just didn't buy anymore, and it was
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit about your transition over to a plant-based diet. You mentioned that you had started with those meat alternatives before tapering those off as well, and graduating to the whole food plant-based lifestyle. So, um, how nervous were you about the prospect of giving up meat and dairy, even though you were reading The Cheese Trap and you knew full well what everything was doing to your body at that point? We build these relationships with food that you think you can never live without certain things. So,
yeah.
what were your emotions like going into that?
Well, I had a very common reaction, and you'll hear, I mean, I still hear people say this every day, like I could never give up cheese. And um I was one of those people that would eat a container of cottage cheese for breakfast and think that that was super healthy. um or when I was home at night watching TV, I would eat string cheese instead of, I don't know, that would be my choice. And I would, again, think that was healthy. So the meat was not a huge issue for me. I've never been one, to sort of dive into a T-bone steak, or, I I would eat a hamburger every now and then, but my issue was the cheese and the dairy. Um, so yeah, that was sort of hard to stop or make different choices. But the way that I felt, I mean, I I can't even. I mean, I would never even consider eating it again based on how good I feel not. And that leads me to believe that I was eating a lot of cheese. I mean, I really would eat a whole tub of, you know, um, cottage cheese, or, those Baby Bell cheeses. I would eat, a whole pack of those in one day. And in
Oh
my
yeah.
mind, I was thinking that was a healthier choice, and clearly we know it's not. So
Oh yeah, geez Louise, those baby bells, man, they will get you. Those things are addictive. Oh my goodness. Um, so when you first took this out, and even though you were using meat alternatives, did you notice that you started to feel better pretty quickly?
immediately,
Yeah, and
I
then
mean, immediately, I would, I could, I had more energy to, and I wasn't running necessarily at the time, but I was walking more. I was able to walk further.
Mhm.
I was sleeping better.
Oh, that's big
All the thing, yeah. And I mean, when you're that alone, that's all I needed. Just
for sure, for
some little
sure.
victory, and
See, but it's funny that you call that a little victory. Like there's nothing little about that. I mean, that's a huge momentous event. That is a life-changing event. Clearly, what happened, even though you weren't at the finish line yet of where you would ultimately land, the fact that you had begun your journey at that point, that in itself is huge. So don't simplify that. Don't downplay that. I mean, that's
thank
big
you,
time, Melissa. That is big time.
thank you.
Um, and then when you graduated to that whole food plant-based diet
Mhm.
and you eliminated all of those processed vegan foods, then how did you feel? How did that kick your energy into overdrive?
That is what ultimately gave me the power, and I say power because that's what it felt like. That gave me the power to do a 10-mile run every Sunday, or go out during my lunch at work and run 6 miles, and you know then come out and complete the rest of my workday. Like there's the energy, the motivation. um there was never an issue of, I can't do this, or I don't have time, or I'm too busy, or I just made it work. And it's 100% what I was putting in my body to give myself fuel to do it, and mindfully doing it,
Let's just
knowing that I had to give myself the right fuel.
and let's push pause about the fact that you just kind of glossed over this, but this is key if you want to add exercise to your routine and you're trying to lose weight and get healthy. You did exactly what it is that I did and so many others that I've heard of who have had this sustained success, and that is you build your exercise into your lunch break so that at the end of the day, when you are tired and you don't want to do anything else, you just want to go home. Well, guess what? You've already done it. You're good to go, right? So that was key. When did you figure that piece of the puzzle out?
Well, I it got to the point where I was working too late, so that when I got home it was dark, or it was not safe to run. But I also I didn't have a choice, because um, I knew how I was going to feel if I didn't get that workout in. So it just made sense for me to do it during work. And then other people that I work with sort of jumped on that train with me. And now, I'm doing a couple classes a day for people. We're, doing cardio, we're running through the halls of the office building. It, it's just one of those things that took off.
And this is,
And
yeah, this is the coolest thing about you is that you're not on this journey alone. Like you really have. You've gotten a lot of people going on a healthier path. I know that you're doing so much now. You just mentioned running with your colleagues at work, but that really spawned a whole other, kind of a side business for you. You on this website, mindfullyfit.org, and tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing there, and then the sense of accomplishment or the emotions that come with knowing that you're really helping others achieve what it is you were able to.
yeah. So mindfully fit is, just how it sounds. And sort of what I mentioned earlier is that this is not something you can accomplish if you don't have a strong mental, um, you know, well-being access point. Um, I think one of the first things I say on my website is, wellness is hard work. It is hard. It's hard, to always make healthy choices, but illness is a lot harder. And, um, I am very, very motivated by helping other people be healthy. I mean, that's what makes me want to continue setting the example, at work where I'm, taking the time out to do a 20-minute strength training workout or, go for a run or whatever it is. That's what Mindfully Fit is about. It's about, taking each other's strengths and what can we do? Let's start with something you're good at and make it bigger, make it better. And I am, I want my goal to be to help you get healthy. And so I want to accomplish that goal as much as I want other people to reach their fitness goals. And, if I could do it for free, I would.
Yeah, I mean, it's selfish not to share these feelings and these tips with people, I think. Just a couple more fun ones here as we wrap up. Um, I know that for me, one of the fun parts about losing weight, for a lot of people, one of the most fun parts is, being able to buy new clothes, ones that you weren't able to fit into in the past, and maybe even buying off of the rack again. Um,
Yeah.
how did your wardrobe change? I mean, did you just go wild at the mall?
Well, I did sort of go back to thinking like, oh wow, I don't have to wear, you know, kind of a grow with me type pants anymore. That, even though leggings are still very, very comfortable. I think that what I loved buying the most was new workout clothes. I mean that that's what I wear the most, it seems like. So yeah, that
Yeah,
was fun.
yeah. And you are a wonderful mother. You love your son to death. If you just take one look on your Instagram page, my goodness gracious, you see that that is the love of your life.
Yeah.
What was he thinking during this process as he's watching you get really healthy?
So that's funny. So right now he has a broken wrist. He breaks a
Mhm.
bone just about every year. He's sort of a rough, and tumble kid. Um, but he's very convinced that his and I think that he's fearless about breaking bones because he knows that he's a healthy eater and that he's going to recover quickly. And that is just, I mean, a direct quote from me, telling him that he'll recover quicker if he, makes healthy food choices. And um, so he's very proud, of the things that I have accomplished, whether it's, um, the training business, the weight loss. He is very excited to, start doing some races with me again. He's sort of at that age where that would work, even though he's a lot faster than me. But he, so he's proud, and I think I posted on my website about our mountain biking adventures together, and he's I'm lucky because he's very athletic, so he motivates me too.
Yeah. That's good. Do you remember the first time that he told you that he was proud of you?
I do. Um, yeah, I do. And he tells me that a lot, actually. It's it's pretty amazing to, it's amazing to go to bed every night making yourself proud. When your kid thinks you're proud, I mean, that's sort of like I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all good. It is
Yeah.
truly all good. And then, last thing, take a look at your screen and just look at these before and after photos. What is it that this person on the right here, would want to say to this person on the left who is just at her emotional wit's end and does not see a whole lot of light at the end of the tunnel? What kind of conversation would you like to have?
It's funny because I have the same smile in both pictures. But definitely, And I don't know, I'm looking back at that and, like I said before, I was working really hard in both of those pictures. The
Yeah.
one on the left, I was working really hard at being unhealthy. The one on the right, I was working really hard at being healthier. um, so I guess I would just say, I wish there's a way that people could feel how good it is or how good it feels to just go to bed proud every day, whatever it takes. Don't, you know, take the little things like you said and don't make them little things. Make those big accomplishments so that you can keep motivating yourself to be better. At that point in my life, I wasn't there, but the little things add up. And one day you wake up and you're down 70 pounds.
And what a day that is.
Yeah.
So Melissa Ann Matthews, thank you so very much for your time and sharing your story with us today. You truly are an inspiration, and you are that light at the end of a dark tunnel for so many people now. So, congratulations, not just for your success, but now everything that you're doing to help others as well. You are truly, truly, truly a remarkable human being.
Thank you. And likewise.
If you feel like you've raised your health IQ by a couple of points, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and leave a nice comment below. And to hear the entire interview, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your shows from and subscribe to the Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. And please leave a 5-star rating.